Hello, a very, very warm welcome to you. I'm very glad that you are joining us for the 46th episode of the Gita Decoded. Sister Denise is here in this studio with us in this entire series, sharing her understanding of what is contained within the text of the Bhagwad Gita. We are now on chapter 14, which is entitled Yoga of Distinction Between the Three Gunas. Yoga of Distinction Between the Three Gunas. Sister Denise, it's always great to have you here. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Sister Denise, I'm going to skip verse 1 and 2 and go immediately to verse number 3. And it's caught my attention because of its unusual wording. It reads, "Great Brahma is my womb. In it I place the seed. The original of all beings exists from that, Arjuna." What is your understanding of the origin of all beings, and how is Brahma related to this?
In the knowledge that we study in Brahma Kumaris, it is said that Brahma is the instrument of creation. So the creator, whom we know as Shiva, the seed, the incorporeal one, will put the seed of knowledge into the mind of Brahma, and through that the impact of the knowledge goes into the rest of the world. So I would understand it this way, that when God wants to establish the world, he does this with the seed of ideas, the seed of thought, the seed of information or knowledge, through the being of Brahma.
I see that verse 4 takes this thought further. Whatever forms are produced in any womb, Arjuna, the great Brahma is their womb, and I am the seed-sowing father. Now, this seed is one of God's titles, isn't it?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I see in the next few stanzas, the reader is reintroduced to the three gunas. And could you explain its relevance in this context?
You see, God is belonging to the world of non-matter, the world of Paramdham, the world of Nirvana, the world of Brahman. And then he comes and establishes the world. That means he gets it going again. And the nature of the world is the energy of spirit in matter proceeds. And energy put into motion means that that energy is getting lost. So when the energy is at its maximum point, it is absolutely pure, so sattva, pure. And then in the middle period, it is rajasic. In the end period, it's tamasic, old, worn out, and hardly working properly. Now, in this chapter, there are many different expressions of the three gunas that are described. So what we have to look at is all the various different ways in which they operate. So, for example, if a person is under the dominance of purity, then sattva is dominant. And you have, for example, in our practice, we would be vegetarian. So it would be called a sattvic diet. So you can have a sattvic diet, which is very, very pure food. And then a rajasic diet, which is food which is heat producing, strong foods. And then tamasic diet would be meat and things which are bad smelling, putrid, like this. A person who is in childhood would be called sattva, pure, young, fresh. In middle age, rajo, where also the passions are operating, and then in old age, tamo, decrepitude, loss of health, loss of speed, and gradually going to death and dissolution. So these three gunas are operating all the time as soon as somebody comes into matter, as soon as spirit comes into the body.
Sister Denise, I do like the description of each one, and let us start in verse 6, which reads, "Of these, sattva, free from impurity, illuminating and free from disease, binds by attachment to happiness and by attachment to knowledge, Arjuna." Is he referring to the soul's karma there, or is he referring to something else?
Here you have the soul's karma being very pure, definitely, and the soul in a very pure state. So everything corresponds to the state of purity, and so it is called sattva.
Rajas is characterized in stanza 7 by passion arising from thirst and attachment. This binds fast the embodied one, Arjuna, by attachment to action.
Very interesting that you can see that sattva is about your being, and then rajas, your doing.
Yeah. And stanza 8, know indeed that tamas is born of ignorance, which confuses all embodied beings. This binds fast, Arjuna, with negligence, indolence, and sleepiness. That is a vice.
Lethargy.
Yeah.
You know, this laziness, this just inability to get going. You're just unable to function in any meaningful way, and you're just like a lump on a log kind of thing.
So, Sister Denise, this is clear that your habits create these accounts, don't they? Who you are, what you do, brings you to this condition.
I think that there's other things involved as well. You see, when a soul first comes onto the earth, that soul is sattvic. And the karma and experience and circumstances and situation correspond to that. You see, some souls have a long period of time on the earth. They follow many thousands of years, many reincarnations, and so on. Other souls, they have a very short period on the earth. They are correspondingly weaker, and they decline very quickly. And so the thing is that from whatever time a soul begins to come into action, they're moving either slowly or quickly from the sattva stage through the rajo stage to the tamo stage. And so whatever is your energy level, the energy of the soul, having passed through reincarnations, so the soul will continue to lose energy and decline, and the activity will correspond to the decline.
So, Sister Denise, we are looking at cyclical time again, aren't we?
Yes.
So we're not looking at just from birth to birth. We're looking at mankind in its entirety, in his or her entirety. I found shloka number 11 to be very thought-provoking. When the light of knowledge shines through all gates of this body, then it should be known that sattva is dominant. That's a very descriptive metaphor, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very beautiful, because a person who is aware of spiritual knowledge, that spiritual knowledge will be applied. How they look, how they speak, how they listen, everything will be pure. So yes, beautiful description.
And conversely, rajas is defined in verse 12, and in verse 13, tamas is also defined. I don't think it's necessary to go to that. Verse 14 reads, when an embodied being goes to dissolution, death, in brackets, under the dominance of sattva, then he attains the stainless worlds of those who know the highest. What would you define as the stainless worlds? And how would you explain that entire stanza?
When you're practicing yoga in your life, and you're practicing many different forms of purity, disciplines of purity, pure lifestyle, and so on, then you're bringing to bear all these forms of sattva. And so when you've reach the end of your life, then you're going to take a rebirth in a correspondingly pure environment. And this is what I think it means by the stainless worlds, untainted environments.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see in the next one,
Which verse are you reading?
That's verse 15, which is talking about a person who is in action. In Rajyoga of Brahma Kumaris, we talk about the person who is unable to experience success in the practice of purity as being corresponding to this, the rajas. You see, you're not absolutely pure, you're the next level down. So you have Sato Pradhan, Sato, and then Rajo, well, you're caught up in action, you see. So action consciousness. So we have body consciousness, action consciousness, and soul consciousness, which might be said to correspond to these three gunas. And so there are many people who identify with what they're doing, and rather than what they are, what they're being. And then the tamas is this really dark, really indolent, really like sleepy, ordinary, lethargic state. Yeah.
Verse 16 sums it up quite nicely, Denise, in short sentences. They say, I like the way that starts, they say, the fruit of good action is sattvic and without impurity, but the fruit of rajasic action is pain, and the fruit of tamasic action is ignorance. I find it interesting that ignorance is cited as being worse than pain.
Well, you know, if you are very conscious and you do not operate according to the quality of your consciousness, there will be regret, which is very painful. You know, so I think something like that. And then ignorance is you're just disconnected from anything refined.
Verse 18 takes one to the direction that a soul is going as far as their quality is concerned. Those established in sattva go upward, rajasic stay in the middle, the tamasic established in the lower quality go downward. So that is very clear.
Yes.
Do you want to go north? Do you want to oscillate somewhere in the middle? Or do you want to go south? Sister Denise, I think the mistake that people make is that when we are about to speak, which has consequences, and when we are about to act, which also has consequences, we don't stop to ask ourselves, what is the quality of my action? What is the quality of my speech? What will the return be?
In any spiritual practice, we begin to be very aware about that, and we start to be quite conscious of it. You see, what you have here in verse 18 is the idea, are you evolving? Are you static? Are you stuck in a stagnant state? Or are you devolving? So in Rajyoga of Brahma Kumaris, what we say is, generally speaking, everyone in the world is going towards tamas, going down. And then once you get into a spiritual practice, you're starting to go the opposite direction, which means that you have a great deal of drag that's dragging you down. So unless your quality of spiritual effort is really very strong, you will remain rajasic, you will remain stuck. Maybe you're not going down, but you won't be able to, you won't have enough energy to go up. And so you have to have very good yoga, very good knowledge, and really be very conscientious to actually start evolving and resisting the energy that's making you go down.
That gives the term upwardly mobile a whole new different dimension.
It
doesn't
does.
It? Yeah, nothing to do with the corporate ladder. Okay, so I now want to go to verse 20, which reads, When an embodied being transcends these three qualities, which are the source of the body, released from birth, death, old age, and pain, he attains immortality. What does that mean?
Well, I think that an embodied being means you and I. I don't know that we can really get beyond pure, neutral, and impure. But I think what we have to do is to establish ourselves in pure action. And if you connect this with the idea of karma, in the study that we do in Brahma Kumaris, we want to move upwards. We want to do pure karma in the awareness that we have a debt of negative karma, which is what's pulling us down. Now, the aim is to become karmatit, that is, you bring your debt to zero, in which case you don't need to deal with the debt. And then any further pure karma you do above and beyond that is kind of extra benefit. And I think that maybe this verse can be referring to that you've transcended the obligation to do pure karma to mitigate your debt of negative karma. And then immortality is a very interesting point, a very interesting concept, because the immortals are the deities, those who live in the golden age, the silver age, the Satyuga, the Treta Yuga. And the idea of Rajyoga is to transcend your human, mortal, ordinary condition, the human condition where you're subject to vices and maya and under the influence of matter and so on, and that you become one who is absolutely in command of the self as a soul. This is known as an immortal person, which means that though you leave your body, you do it by your own volition. So this is how you're called immortal. Not that you keep the same body for eons and eons.
I like what you just said, because a lot of people are under the illusion that immortality refers to their body, not the soul.
Yeah, it's really the soul in a pure body, in the pure period of time where the whole world is in a sato pradhan state, and the soul is the master of matter. And there is no possibility of any negative experience or emotion, and then you are really the one who is the master of matter. You can choose your own death.
That's very powerful. So Denise, the next few stanzas go again into the subject of neutrality. Okay? And the words that are used are to one to whom pain and pleasure are equal, one to whom a clod, a stone, and gold are the same, dispassionate towards the side of friend or foe, and one who serves God is one who transcends these qualities, is ready for absorption in Brahman. And the last verse reads, "For I am the abode of Brahman, of the immortal and the imperishable, of everlasting virtue and of absolute bliss." This is the stanza in which this chapter ends. Do you want to share your understanding of this? Sister Denise, let me read the last two stanzas to put it in context, okay? So the qualities of this very noble human being is described, and the last two stanzas reads as follows: "And he who serves me, capital M, with the yoga of unswerving devotion," nice term, "transcending these qualities, is ready for absorption in Brahman. For I am the abode of Brahman, of the immortal and imperishable, of everlasting virtue and of absolute bliss." So I see on one hand God is issuing an invitation and describing the type of personality that will be deserving of his return of energy, God's return of energy. And then the chapter ends on these two stanzas. How would you explain it?
The yogin, The one who practices Raj Yoga ultimately is striving to leave the body in remembrance of God. So that means that you are going away from the cycle of birth and rebirth. And of course, when this happens at the end of one kalpa, the end of one cycle, this is where it's most perfect and most relevant, because this is the time when anyway all souls have to go back to the soul world, but you want to be free to do that. So you have to become what we call karmatit. And then you return to Brahmand, the world of light, and you leave the body in remembrance of God, and that is the ultimate highest attainment. So this experience of being on the same level of God, who is existing there in a state of bliss, and you come to be like God, that is absolute success.
And so a yogin distinguishes between the three gunas and decides, this is who I want to be.
Yeah, the yogin is always moving away from the lower nature, base emotions, qualities, and refining the self constantly until everything about you is sato pradhan, which means that you have gone back to your beginning, your original stage, your original perfection. You've settled all your karma. There's a lot of work involved in this, but it can be done. And so this beautiful description of the successful yogi.
Okay, Sister Denise, we have to say goodbye to you right now, but this has been a fulfilling half an hour, very, very interesting. And I think your message says to the viewer, look at your life, look at your heart, and see what is the nature of your actions. Look at your words and ask yourself, what quality of soul am I? Okay, and what I found so inspiring about it is that it places the responsibility squarely in the hands of the person listening to you. We don't have excuses once we're enlightened, do we? Yeah, that's the karma of watching this show, by the way. Once you know, you know. And what I like particularly about what Sister Denise shared today is that it's up to you to take a look at your own personality and ask yourself, in which category are you falling into as far as the karmic consequences are of your own thoughts, your own words and your own actions. You decide your future. And although we know this for this life, very few of us think beyond death of this body in this life. So a very deep and powerful message from chapter 14 of the Bhagavad Gita as interpreted by Sister Denise. And I do like the depths that Sister Denise went to in sharing what this chapter contains. It's very deep, it's very profound, and it's a mirror. Chapter 14 is a mirror that you use to look at your life and ask yourself, where am I at? Very powerful, very deep stuff. So, Sister Denise, thank you so very much. This has been a brilliant half an hour, and I hope you understand the true message that God is trying to allow to reach your ears. Do take care, and thank you for joining us. I will see you for the next episode.